And you're live.
Okay, we're back on the conference committee on H.454. Let us start by saying we had not intended for that to be the shock that it came across as being. That was, and we're like you, we're trying to get to yes.
Okay.
So, but just a little background on where the weights came from. And by the way, we're going to make a proposal that goes back to where we were.
Okay.
Without doing with weights.
That's delightful. Thank you.
Any of those issues.
Mhm.
Because it didn't, the intent was never to be in, but from the perspective, and a lot of angst about this, both from the academies that have the CTEs and the academies that have historically set tuition, they agreed to give up the ability to set tuition, which was, that's a huge thing after 200 years of setting tuition and having the relationships with the communities. But they looked at it, but within the context of a weight for high school, it worked. And so because there were always weights in the high school weights in the bills as they went through. And that was back then.
Through the Senate.
Yes. That's when the high school said, okay, that's fair. And then when the weights went away, it was, oh my God, what have we, this isn't going to work. And so both relates to the two that have the the integrated CTEs or the comprehensive CTEs, and the two that don't. That tuition then, giving up the ability to set tuition without having a high school weight is like panic material. So what we would propose is that rather than do everything that was there, is just to simply say that the high schools, before the academies, those schools that set tuition, just continue to do so under this without a date at which it stops. There will be the study that's coming, that actually came out of the Senate version, I think. And if, then we'll see what that says, and then that gets discussed. So it's just that there's the starting point of the status quo rather than changing before there's a knowledge of what is to come. So that's it.
So let me just ask a couple questions here. So you'd like the independent schools to be able to continue to charge tuitions. I mean, you said academies, but I assume these are
The
all,
ones who set tuition, the ones that can set tuition.
those are all independent schools.
Well, a lot of them can get the average, right?
But it's,
I mean, they send a bill.
Yes.
That's state
Yes.
position.
Yes. Just one thing.
Okay, so, I mean, there's no anticipated change in that until we change to a foundation formula anyway. Okay, so then we change to a foundation formula, and what you're saying is, and you still want the status quo.
Not necessarily. If the change comes, the study is done, the analysis is done, and it makes sense.
Study is.
Well, the weight study that's in this bill.
Yep.
And then, that gets, if it makes sense, they all voluntarily said that's, we'll give up the ability because that looks like it's fair. And I would anticipate that would happen again, or just happen by legislation. It's just that we'd rather have the starting point be that the status quo stays in place until it's changed. It's not saying it won't be changed or shouldn't be.
I'm a little curious as to what happens if the independent schools are unhappy with what the number ends up, and they say, well, actually, that's still not enough. We're going to continue, need to have the status quo continue. So we have districts receiving $16,000 per student, and Burton Academy charging $19,000 a student. Where does that happen? Where's the difference happen?
The goal is, we're dealing in trust here. Right now, they set their tuition, right? Now we're going forward, we're setting their tuition. It's coming with child. If you run a whole school district, and when we started this discussion, there was a wait for CTE and there was a wait for high schools, for secondary schools.
I don't remember there being.
There was a wait when the first Tammy Colby numbers were used. When she recalibrated, there was no wait going away because they didn't see there being any
Difference in cost.
difference in costs.
But we don't
Well-
believe that.
Some, not everybody believes that everything she says is carved in tablets of stone.
Okay.
And that there's no CTE weight in this. If you don't run, it's the same deal we did with childcare. You use the money you made because you needed fewer people to supervise 3-year-olds than 3-month-olds. And when we took the 3-year-olds off into pre-K, they weren't able to support the infants, and we had to deal with that. And when you.
And so are you saying in,
schools,
you're saying in a fully operating district, things balance out?
they can balance out,
Non-operating
but the
district.
other ones can't.
That's the-
And the other ones that are carrying a CTE can't either. They are nervous. I don't have any of those schools. It's not my issue. But we're doing a lot in this bill to offset present anxiety because no one can visualize the future state.
Yeah.
And that's what they're asking, is until that weight study comes back and the weights are set. And I think if we will ask the weight study to look particularly at these schools because they may well be different than independent, publicly operated schools.
I think I understand the intent of where you're coming from, I think. I want to offer that I think all schools in the state right now actually have the ability to set their spending. It's one of the, both the really fairly extraordinary things about Vermont and one of the things that have led to the very ever-changing spending that we are tackling right now. And so right now in this bill, as passed the House and the Senate, we had all schools, whether they were public schools or independent schools, change from being able to set their own spending to moving to the spending that's state declared. That was true across the board, right? Public schools are also changing that assumption under this. What I think was shocking to me about what you brought forward was less the intent and more that it was an enormous amount of brand new language that had not been vetted by either chamber, and some of which required a lot of mathing before we could get our heads around it. And a lot of, like geography of looking at maps, right? And just understanding impact.
We saw the reaction and understood what had happened.
Okay.
What we were trying to-
Yeah. And so when you say you want to pull back to where we were before, are you saying that you're withdrawing? I'm really just trying, I'm not
Yeah.
trying to lay a trap. I'm just trying to understand where we are in the conversation.
Yes.
You're withdrawing all three of these proposals?
No, the one about the
Base and rates.
weights.
Okay, but not the spending, the underspending stuff.
No,
Or the allowable growth rates.
Okay,
no.
or the independent school language,
Yeah.
or the removing the ability to tax second home in order to make sure that Vermonters' tax rates don't go.
I'll have that in the study, which we said yesterday.
Okay.
That's okay, that's good. That's.
Okay, so all of that's still on the table. It's just a
Yeah, the other-
change in the formula you're withdrawing.
Yes.
And you're adding that independent schools are not subject to all of this change until we study it.
Well, yeah, until the study or until things change. Just, it's a matter of the starting point.
Until the weight is set.
It's a matter of whether it starts one way or the starting point is another.
I want to offer that the part that was so, the underspending proposal was. the
I
one
need
that
a
was-
clarification here. Okay. You are pulling back everything you put on the table?
No.
Just the
Weights,
changes.
the parts about the weights and the,
Okay,
And the changed base and the weights.
okay.
I think the underspending part also, I need a lot to catch up on. That, what I heard from you all was, maybe even not full agreement on what that proposal should be.
oh, so you mean the default in particular?
Yes, the default
Yeah.
tax rate,
The
whether it's going to cover itself.
If the default is 100%, that's fine.
Okay,
In the instance of a failed vote.
Yeah.
They can't vote on anything, they can't have percentage other than 100. They just get off.
Only return to publish is the communities that want to spend.
um,
And then we try to put a simple ladder.
and have you, I don't want to put more pressure on staff in a sort of ever-changing environment, but have you had an opportunity to have it modeled whether or not on a district by district basis, this would actually cover the costs needed in the education fund if districts underspend?
The answer is. It's not something that can be modeled because we don't know which districts may or may not. We do know that if every
Yeah,
district.
of course, with every district that it would work. Yes, I
Right.
understand that.
And I think we pretty much know that the districts that have lower income, lower property wealth tend to vote for.
That's actually not, that's one of the things that's most striking to me about all of this. That's not strangely true.
I would disagree with you.
Okay, I feel like we've
can
looked at that
disagree.
research together a number of
Disagree.
times. Okay.
I'm pretty comfortable that if everybody did it, would be 113 million to the good that,
Sure, but not everyone will do it.
no, but I don't think that it would change it from a positive to a negative.
Okay, I'm bending over backwards to make sure the administration understands that what we're doing is not going to cost more than current law.
I
And
appreciate that.
great, thank you. And so just the fact that you're saying that you feel confident about this is not enough spreadsheeting for me. And I know we don't know what the districts are. We've been working in some cases with sample districts. In places where we can't work with sample districts, I think we're saying, let's study this because we have a few years in front of us. And make sure that the math works so that we don't wind up with a, failed education fund.
We've got several factors going here. We need to reassure the third party not at this table. But we also have caucus members.
Absolutely.
Thing whose towns have seen that spreadsheet that says if we put these base and weights in place today, you're gonna see a 30% tax increase. Nobody wants to go home and have their friends and neighbors screaming, what are you doing? And we've got the other group that are seeing a 20% spending decrease and all, which is totally, no one's proposing doing that. It's irrelevant.
And I think
But that doesn't solve the problem. What I think some people in the caucus are looking for is saying, see, we've given you this out. I would feel more comfortable waiting.
to work on it next year.
Yeah, but we have to get the votes to get this bill out of here this year. And B, we have to go home and be able to talk to people. And I think that's the balance. We're in here with our charts and our graphs
Yeah.
and our blinkers on. But either tomorrow or Monday or Tuesday, we're gonna be out there with them. And we're going to have to be able to explain either we're dealing with this or this is how we intend to deal with this. Or there's no way any one of us is pulling the trigger on this if we're gonna see, financially strapped communities see a 30% increase in their taxes.
I appreciate that. I'm concerned that passing a completely unvetted proposal will also cause significant damage to people's property tax rates and trust in government and schools. And I'm concerned that also continuing to talk about the scale of the tax rate changes in dramatic terms is going to further exacerbate that fear when we are doing a great deal within the bill to mitigate that. And so I want us to be very careful about
We are.
that.
I just need to add that I think you're absolutely right. We need to go out and be able to talk to people tomorrow. I can't even tell my colleagues what the implications of this are and what it means. I mean, it's so far outside this would be the calculation of tuition and all of what is in here and the ballot and what the voting means and all of that.
That's what we're here to deal
Yes. We've got 147 other people who are going to need to understand this.
with. I only have, 27.
Yes, I'll say we're in the waning hours, and this is a significant proposal that we would normally take several weeks of testimony on. And we're receiving it at the 11th hour. It was not in either of our proposals. So that's sort of, I would say, a major challenge. And I would echo what Emily says, that I'm not saying that these aren't problems that are worthy of a very close look. I'm just saying that an unvetted, sort of mapped out proposal at the 11th hour like this is not something that I think anybody can be terribly comfortable with.
So what do we do?
I think I would like to go do some math and some thinking.
We can do the same.
Okay.
Who gets Julie?
It's okay,
You get.
Thanks.
I mean, I'm concerned that we have a basic process question.
Yes.
The problem in that, this is big, it is untested, we've had no expert.
Just chuck that. How do we?
Are you proposing that?
The question is, how do we give reassurance to all of those people and get enough votes to get this out? How do we, what answer do we have when they wave that piece of paper and say, my taxes are going up 30%?
Do you believe passing this tonight is the right answer?
I don't know if that is the right answer. That was 15-minute at lunch's attempt to come up with an answer.
Let me dig into it. Okay, I mean, the reason we're here is because I think we all know this. This is a bill. It came up, it was a Democratic caucus bill in the House. It was a Democratic caucus bill in the Senate. Okay.
Well, it was not vetted in the Senate. It wasn't.
Well, I know, but I mean, it wasn't a bipartisan bill.
Right.
And now you've got a situation where you're probably going to need votes from both parties, and you're going to need a governor who's from the same party as the people that were not able to vote for this bill when it went through the House and the
The
Senate.
administration did not include anything like this.
And so So here we are, we had a bill that was one caucus all the way through. And now we've got to square it up with both caucuses and a Republican governor. So I guess let's dig in. I mean, if you need help from JFO to understand it, let's take the time we need. But
I don't think there's any universe where understanding a change of this scale is going to happen in an hour. I think that the problem that you are looking to solve is worthy of deep exploration, and it's worthy of other solutions. And I wonder if we could find a way to solve that problem within the confines of the bill. I think there are significant opportunities for that. And so I'm not, since it's the problem you brought to the table, I'm not necessarily interested in being the only one trying to solve it. So I would ask you all during the break to think of other ways to solve it that are less dramatic than this.
I think that it is a problem.
No, I think it's a problem.
Absolutely a problem.
100% a problem.
Okay.
That's why, and I think there's a lot in this bill that helps solve it, and I think we could add more.
Okay.
More.
Yes, that you're saying that it is, if this bill does not seek to solve the problem, that the way a foundation formula works is some people are, it's going to be balanced and leveled, and some win, some lose. That is why there is a proposal in here for a homestead exemption. That's why there is a proposal that you made, that we agreed with, to phase things in.
But we have not seen that the homestead exemption, what its impact will be. We know who the low spending towns are. We know who the financially challenged towns are. We just haven't had a chance to see that that homestead exemption will help them. Will it?
Okay, maybe that's something we could look at after a break.
Yeah.
And I need to go back to this concept of continuing to charge tuition in a world where the districts themselves that would be paying that tuition aren't receiving that amount of money. Your proposal, you didn't give us any paperwork, but you said what we'd like to do is have the academies and in all independent schools continue to be able to charge tuition.
current law, let's go to current law.
All I'm asking is that in the future world where we have moved to a foundation formula, does that come to an end?
Well, I think what we're waiting to see, I think right now what we're seeing, at least what's passed through the House, what's passed through the Senate, is a set of weights that is geared towards a K through 12 district, a K through 12 system where money is fungible, whether it's secondary or CTE or anything else, okay? But our receiving schools are not K through 12 districts. They educate a certain grade. They might have a special CTE, for example. And so bases and weights that are set up for K through 12 districts where money is fungible, wherever the money needs to go in the district, don't work for schools that are grade specific or mission specific, right? And so what we need to see is a set of weights that are not K through 12, but are actually a little more surgical than that.
And Senator Beck, I don't want to argue with you about this because I think we just have a difference of opinion about how the math works, but I just want to say this in order to sort of correct the House record, that it was not designed as a system where the money is fungible. It was developed because there was no evidence that educating high school students was more expensive than educating primary school students. That is possibly because high school happens at a greater scale than elementary school. I don't know the exact reasons for it. I have not been able to do the research myself, but that is why those weights are set up that way. It's not because money is fungible.
Well,
I think we should take a break.
let's got respond first.
Whoever,
Yes.
okay, and they could have just gone over to AOE and looked at the data.
Sure. I mean, the administration also did not propose a high school weight with their data.
So,
Let's come back.